There are places where the weight of words can seal destinies, and within the cold walls of the courtroom, each sentence is more than a decision. It is an echo of lives changed forever. Imagine the rigid stares, the piercing silence, and the horror stories that remain unsaid but felt. Here, the truth is hunted, not delivered. This is not just a room with judges and lawyers. It is a stage where human tragedies unfold, and justice is sometimes a shadow that slips through our fingers. Imagine a crowded courtroom, where every face tells a story, every held breath indicates fear or anticipation. These settings go beyond a simple trial. They are arenas where macabre secrets are revealed, where victims seek justice that may never come. But have you ever wondered what happens when the line between right and wrong is blurred? When the desire for revenge takes the place of law? This is where the real drama begins. If you think courtrooms are places of order and security, prepare yourself for a new perspective. In each session, the tension is palpable, emotions run high. Witnesses hesitate, glances meet, and what seems like a search for the truth turns into a maze of lies and manipulation. The scariest part? Often, what happens behind closed doors never comes to light. How many secrets do you think the walls of a courtroom can hide? And when the truth finally emerges, it doesn't come alone. It comes with unpredictable consequences. Think of a common courtroom scene: a defendant, a judge, and a witness. Now add the unexpected, the dark. Imagine a mother seeking revenge or a prisoner hiding poison in the middle of a hearing. Stories like these make the blood run cold and remind us how justice can be a double-edged sword. The courtroom is not only a place of resolution, but also of transformation. For some, it is a place of hope. For others, the end of the line. And in between these extremes, stories unfold that would challenge even the most skeptical. What do we do when justice fails? What do we think when a tragedy unfolds before the eyes of the law? Perhaps the real question is, are we prepared to face what happens in these scenarios? And so, with each new case, new questions arise, challenging our perception of what is fair. This is where justice ceases to be an abstract idea and becomes visceral, painful. Get ready, because this journey will plunge you into a territory where the unexpected is the only certainty. But what happens when justice itself is questioned? Let's follow this path. In 1970s Germany, Klaus Grabowski was more than just a name. He was a shadow that hung over anyone who knew of his crimes. Imagine a quiet town shaken by a series of events so dark they seemed straight out of a nightmare. Grabowski, a repeat offender, became a symbol of fear by committing unthinkable acts against the most vulnerable, children. His story is not just about crime, but about how evil can hide behind ordinary appearances, until one day it explodes in tragedy. Arrested for strangling a child, many believed that prison would be the end of him. However, he was granted parole, and with it came a false sense of security. But how can you trust someone who has already shown what he is capable of? Klaus not only proved himself to be dangerous, but he also left an indelible mark on German society. His violent tendencies were not contained, leading to a new and horrific crime. For those who lived through those days, each new piece of news was confirmation that the nightmare was not yet over. Then comes Anna, an 8-year-old girl whose innocence was brutally taken away by Klaus. Her death was not only a loss to her family, but a shock to the entire nation. In 1981, the courtroom became the stage where not only justice was sought, but where the thirst for revenge boiled over. And at the center of it all was Marion Bock, Anna's mother, who watched the man responsible for ending her daughter's life stand before her, unrepentant. What happened next defies any notion of ordinary justice. During the trial, Marion, driven by despair and grief, took justice into her own hands, shooting Klaus in the courtroom. The room that had once been seeking justice was transformed into a scene of chaos and revenge. But was it just desperation? Or could a mother desperate for justice become something more, a symbol of the fury the system could not contain? Marion was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but only served 3. In 1996, she passed away, but her act is still remembered as an extreme reaction to a system that many believed had failed. And here is the question that remains to this day: where does justice end and revenge begin? When laws seem incapable of protecting, people can be pushed to the limit. But what really scares us is the possibility that we could be faced with a similar situation and not know what we would do. This story makes us reflect on the limits of justice and the fragility of the system that was supposed to protect it. But the courtroom would not be the only scene of a shocking death. In another corner of the world, an even more unexpected tragedy was unfolding, and this time, death came in the form of poison. Imagine being in an international court, where every word spoken can define the future of a nation. This is the setting in which Slobodan Praljak, a former Bosnian-Croatian general, was facing his sentence. The tension in the air was almost palpable. Convicted of war crimes during the Bosnian War, he was seen by many as a symbol of the conflict that had devastated the region. But no one imagined that the trial would end in one of the most shocking moments in the history of modern courts. The sentence of 20 years in prison was announced. The silence that had taken over the room was quickly replaced by an act that no one expected. Praljak stood up, stared at the court, and, in an act of extreme defiance, drank poison in front of everyone. The shock was instantaneous. How could someone hide poison in such a secure place? The question that loomed was, does security really work when desperation meets determination? The poison he took is, to this day, a mystery. Where did it come from? Who supplied it? These questions remain unanswered, creating an air of mystery surrounding the case. It is as if Praljak's own shadow still looms over the courtroom, reminding everyone that sometimes the desire for control can be subverted by the unexpected. And while many saw his act as the last hurrah of a man who refused to be broken, others saw a criminal trying to escape justice. Reactions to Praljak's death were polarized. For some, he was a hero who sacrificed himself for the sake of his honor. For others, a man who took the easy way out to avoid the consequences of his actions. The courtroom, once a stage for justice, became an arena where human emotions clashed brutally. Who was right? Who was wrong? In the end, the answer depended on who you asked. This event raised serious questions about the security of international courts. If poison could be smuggled into a supposedly invulnerable place, what else could go unnoticed? Praljak's tragedy was not just that of his death, but also that of the loss of trust in a system that was supposed to be infallible. When justice is so blatantly violated, the world watches, questioning the validity of the institutions that represent it. And so Praljak's case remains a grim reminder that even under the bright lights of international justice, the shadows of the past can find their way back into the open. But this would not be the last time violence would invade a courtroom. In another courtroom, death would come once more, this time amid the chaos of a desperate attack. On a day that seemed like just another court session, the courtroom turned into a scene of chaos and terror. Siole Angel, a member of a notorious gang, was there, ostensibly to answer for his crimes. However, his true intention was something much more sinister. He was waiting, like a caged beast, for a moment of weakness in the system, and that moment arrived in a devastating way, taking everyone by surprise. Imagine a courtroom, where security should be absolute, transformed into a stage of sudden violence. Angel was not handcuffed, the first flaw in a system that was supposed to guarantee order, and with a pen, an ordinary object, he saw his opportunity. In seconds, he converted a simple writing instrument into a lethal weapon. He attempted to attack a witness, sending everyone in the room into a state of absolute panic. Here, The pen literally became more dangerous than the sword. But the question remains, how did no one realize the danger until it was too late? The security response was immediate and brutal. 4 shots fired by a marshal sealed Engel's fate. The courtroom, which had been a civil debate moments before, became the scene of a summary execution. The sound of gunshots reverberated off the walls, leaving the feeling that justice had been replaced by brute force. But was there any other choice? When faced with the unexpected, instinct and training collide, and split-second decisions are made. The debate began after the incident. Was this excessive force or a necessary response? The case went to trial, but in 2018, the court decided to dismiss the case. For many, it was a blow to the confidence that justice would also protect those within its own walls. Had the courtroom, a place that should be a symbol of control and rationality, failed to live up to its promise? This incident is not only a reminder of the fragility of security, but also of how thin the line is that separates order from chaos. In a courtroom, where words should be the only weapons, Engel's violence and the security response show that even the most controlled places are not immune to human unpredictability. What else could be lurking in the shadows, waiting for a system failure? And just when you think you've seen it all, another courtroom horror story emerges, this time in Atlanta, where the chaos wasn't limited to the courtroom, but spread throughout the city. On the morning of March 11, 2005, the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta turned into a battlefield. Brian Nichols, a seemingly self-possessed man, was already in custody, but what happened that day showed that underestimating someone can be a fatal mistake. Nichols was not just an ordinary defendant. He was a man with a plan that would turn the courthouse into the scene of a bloody escape that would send an entire city into a panic. Nichols managed to overpower a police officer using sheer physical force, stealing her gun and setting off a chain of events that would leave a trail of death. The courthouse, until then a symbol of justice and order, became a place of fear and uncertainty. Imagine being there, hearing the first shots and realizing that the danger was not outside, but inside those secure walls. Fear spread quickly, and within minutes, chaos ensued. The attack was not limited to the courthouse. Nichols, after killing a judge and a reporter, fled, leaving the city on high alert. The search for him was intense, involving police, journalists, and terrified citizens. For 26 hours, Atlanta lived a nightmare, with streets blocked and tension lingering at every corner. For many, it was proof that even the most secure institutions are not immune to collapse. Nichols, however, was not just a killer on the run. He became the face of a system that failed to anticipate the worst. His capture came unexpectedly, after he released a hostage, but the damage was already done. The courthouse, which was supposed to be a haven of justice, had to face the harsh reality. Security was not infallible, and when terror invades the heart of justice, public trust is deeply shaken. Nichols's life sentence, without the possibility of parole, was an expected outcome, but it was not enough to erase the fear he generated. His name continues to be remembered as a symbol of what can happen when security is compromised. The legacy of their violence has led to drastic changes to security measures in U.S. courthouses, but will these changes be enough? Or could chaos erupt again in a moment of carelessness? And just when you think you've heard every horror story possible from inside courthouses, a deeper reflection arises. These places, meant to be places of justice, are also vulnerable to the worst of human nature. But what does this mean for the future of the institutions that are supposed to protect us? Courts are often seen as temples of truth and justice, but the stories we have witnessed so far reveal a darker side. The walls that are supposed to protect society have also witnessed tragedies that shake our faith in safety and the justice system. It is strange to think that in a place where words are powerful weapons, despair and violence still find space to manifest themselves. This leads us to reflect: are we really safe when we seek justice? These events bring to light a profound moral dilemma. How far can justice go before it becomes revenge? The case of Marion Bach and the revenge against Klaus Grabowski reminds us that even in a courtroom, the human heart can be overcome by emotions that defy rationality. It is easy to judge from the outside, but what would we do in her shoes? Would we be able to trust justice, or would we take our fate into our own hands? The line between right and wrong, in such cases, becomes increasingly blurred. Safety also emerges as a central issue. How can we ensure that the courtroom, a place meant for order, does not become a stage for chaos? Praljak's poison and Siole Angel's shooting expose flaws that go beyond the physical. They are cracks in the system itself. If a pen or a vial of poison can go unnoticed, what else might be going unnoticed? Each of these cases is a reminder that safety cannot be taken for granted. There is also the question of morality. Each story carries a lesson, but also a burden. Brian Nichols, with his trail of destruction, has forced us to re-evaluate how we deal with violence inside the courtroom. But is increased security enough? Or should we look deeper, at the causes that drive people to such extreme acts? Perhaps true justice can only be achieved when we understand the reasons behind the chaos. Finally, the courtrooms represent an unsettling duality. While they offer hope for justice, they can also be the stage for the worst of humanity. These stories leave us with more questions than answers. How can we balance safety, justice, and morality in a world where human unpredictability is always lurking? And as we reflect on these tragedies, one final question arises. What happens when justice itself fails? What is left for those who seek it? Let's explore this together.